All righty. Well, go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining. We still have a few people joining, trickling in, but go ahead and get started because we have a lot of great, important information and really great advice and tips that we wanted to share with you as you're preparing your applications for the Youth Innovation Challenge. So, and I wanted to, at the very start, give a shout out to all of our partners and supporters of this opportunity. We are so excited on behalf of the Jeep to be able to offer this challenge up this year. And so I wanted to give a big thank you to the Taiwan Ocean Conservation Administration, as well as the Jeep Secretariat, NAAEE, and our other partners, US EPA and the Taiwan EPA, for everything that they've done to help make this challenge possible for all of you who are joining us today. So go ahead and get started. Just sharing a couple of Zoom logistics before we get going. Just a reminder that you all can use the chat on this webinar. So you can just join any conversations, but most importantly, ask any questions that you have in the chat. And as you can see here, you can either message a specific one of us or a specific attendee or everyone. I would encourage you to share your questions with everyone so people can see if questions are already being asked. And we will be addressing questions as we go, but we will also have time at the end for any last questions. So to test out the chat, we want you all to tell us where in the world you are joining from. We always love to see who's in the audience. Looks like we've got a very international group here today. So let us know in the chat where you are joining us from. Awesome. Pakistan, Nigeria, Peru. Wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Mm-hmm.
Tanzania, more from Peru and Nigeria. Taiwan. Awesome. Vietnam, Mexico. Oh my goodness. Okay, I can't read off. I can't read them all. This is so great. Well, thank you so much for joining. Keep throwing in the chat where you're joining. Really, we have such a great international crowd here today. Alrighty, so our plan for the next hour is we're going to share with you a little bit about the Global Environmental Education Partnership, or the JEEP, and the Youth Innovation Challenge. We're going to remind you about some benefits of the challenge and why you might want to apply. We're going to highlight our key eligibility and selection criteria. And then we're going to give you lots of tips for your application. So some tips for your video pitch, as well as some tips for your written responses. All right. So I just wanted to let you all know who of us are here on behalf of the JEEP and NAAE. So I've got my colleague, Melissa Taggart here, the Director of International Programs at NAAE. Myself, I am the Manager of International Programs and EE 30/30, and my other colleague, Madeline Halvey, who is our JEEP Fellow. And all three of us together, we are here to support you. We are here to help you with your applications. We really want this to be a success for all of you. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we are happy to help you. And we also have Denise Pritchard here, who is our storytelling consultant, and she will be giving you some great tips for your video pitch. She also put together their top 10, I think it was 10 pitch tips on our website. So we're really excited to have Denise here to dive a little bit further into some of those tips. All right, so a little bit about the JEEP. So the JEEP is the Global Environmental Education Partnership. And it's a global partnership that was launched by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Taiwan Environmental Protection Administration, and NAAE, the North American Association for Environmental Education, is the secretariat, and that's where Melissa, myself, and Madeline are based. And so the overall goal of the JEEP is to really build global capacity for environmental education. And we do this through sharing resources, we do this through convenings and connecting people and organizations. And so this Youth Innovation Challenge, and actually I really encourage you to take a look at our website, got lots of great resources on there. The Youth Innovation Challenge really falls into one of our goals, which is around leadership. So one of our major goals through the JEEP is to support, mentor, and empower this newest generation of leaders, of innovative and inspirational environmental education leaders. So that is where the Youth Innovation Challenge comes in. So as I mentioned earlier, in partnership with the Ocean Conservation Administration of Taiwan, we are so excited to launch this Innovation Challenge all around solving issues of marine litter and climate change. And really the goal of this program is to empower young people over the world to think about and to launch these really great new innovative ideas to address these issues, all using environmental education. So all demonstrating the power that environmental education can have to address these really big issues that we have today. So why should you apply? I think a lot of you maybe already know some of the benefits if you're here on the webinar, but we wanted to highlight some of the reasons why you might want to apply. Overall, this program can give you recognition, feedback, and also funding even to help you start your big idea. So at the end of the challenge, we will be selecting 15 finalists. Our review panel will be selecting 15 finalists, and the 15 finalists will all receive a certificate. They will receive recognition through the JEEP, NAAE, and our other partners on our websites and on social media as well. And these 15 finalists will also be highlighted at our 2021 Asia Pacific Virtual EE Forum. And at that forum, you will have great exposure to leaders and other influencers in the environmental education space in Asia Pacific, but also from around the world. So it's a really great opportunity, even if you make it as one of our 15 finalists. And then from the 15, we will also be selecting 3 winners, and the winners will each receive a $1,000 US dollar prize. And this $1,000, you don't have to necessarily put it towards your solution. We hope you do, but this is a prize to support you in whatever way you need support. So, we will be announcing the finalists and winners by December 2021. I think by the beginning of December or late November. So those are some of the big benefits. And don't forget to be typing your questions in the chat. We'll be taking some as we go, and we will also be answering some at the very end as well. So I also wanted to remind you all, we have this really important applicant handbook that has really crucial information in there for anyone who is applying. We are not going through all of the details of the handbook because we encourage you to take time to read through it on your own. But this handbook includes really detailed information about the selection criteria. It includes more information about eligibility. It also has some more tips and advice for you as you're filling out your application. So please don't forget to read through this handbook in detail. Madeline has just shared the link in the chat as a reminder. And so we're going to highlight some of the key things that are in the handbook. But remember to also read it on your own. So some important notes about eligibility. So clearly your solution must address climate change or marine litter or both. We recognize that these issues are connected and that there may be solutions that address kind of that can address both of them together. So you must include, be addressing one of those issues or both, and it must include an environmental education component. And this, it can be a small part, it can be a large part, it doesn't really matter, but what's most important is that you consider our environmental education selection criteria that is listed, that is detailed in the handbook. We have really detailed criteria in there about what we're looking for in terms of what does good environmental education or effective environmental education look like. So what's most important is the quality of the environmental education component that you propose. So your application must be submitted online through Submittable. And actually, Madeline, could you share the link to the Submittable application? You have to create an account, a free account, and it's easy to create. And once you create the account on Submittable, you will see the full application. And your application must also be in English. Unfortunately, this year, we are only able to review applications that are submitted in English. If you have any issues with Submittable, with the online application, you can email us and we can try to help you. And finally, you, the applicant, you have to be between 15 and 30 years old, and you can be from anywhere in the world. We are not targeting any specific countries or regions. You can be from anywhere in the world. And so we have already started receiving some questions. So by email. So we've started a frequently asked questions page on our website. And we wanted to share some of these with you, but we will continue adding some of these frequently asked questions on our website as we receive them. So one of the questions we've received is, can we apply as a team? So we do really encourage collaboration. We think some of the best solutions and the best projects are done as teams with different people's expertises complementing each other's. But for the online application, one person must submit the application. So the application has to be in one person's name, and that person has to be between 15 and 30 years old. But we do really encourage you to mention your team members in the application and even include them in the video if you can, because we really do encourage you to work as a team and to be proposing as a team. Can I submit more than one solution? This year, unfortunately, no. We encourage you to really think about what is your best solution? What is the solution that best meets the selection criteria that we've put out in this handbook? And will you be judging English ability? We will not. We really don't want English to be a barrier for anyone. And so we will only be scoring your video and your written responses based on the strength of your solution and also based on how you can communicate about your work and your vision and how you can inspire others in how you're communicating about your work. Okay, so do we have any questions related to what I've talked about so far? I guess I'll just pause because I've given a lot of information.
Nina, we have a question that came in through the chat. How many team members will be considered? And my suspicion is that it can be as many as you like in your group. Is that okay?
Yeah, we don't have a limit.
Right.
I would just say, keep in mind, there is a word limit. And
Mhm.
so when you are describing your team and everyone's expertises and how it relates to your solution, you might find that you might need to prioritize listings, describing some in more detail than others. So that's the only thing I would keep in mind, the word limit, and think about how you want to bring in everyone on your team if you have a big team.
Yeah. And then there's another question, are we to do both video and written? And that is, yes, there is a video submission, and there is also a written component that is fairly brief, but it asks a few questions about you and about your idea. And both need to be in English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we have another question that came in. Please, could you explain more about the environmental education component? And I believe, Dina, you are about to talk about that. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
good segue.
yeah. So I'm about to cover our selection criteria. Yes.
Great.
All right. Well, that's a perfect transition to the selection criteria. So we have 4 main selection criteria that are all listed in the handbook. We are going to highlight, we're just going to give a quick overview of the criteria, but I really recommend, for the most detail about the environmental education component, I really encourage you to read through the handbook, because we've provided more detail about that criteria there. This is just a really quick overview. So the first selection criteria is that your solution must include an environmental education component. And like I said, it could be a large component, it could be a relatively small component, it can be just one of many approaches that you are using in your solution. But for whatever environmental education component you propose, it must address the following sub criteria that we have listed out in the handbook. So first, that your solution, it must build capacity for informed choices. So this means that you are not telling people specifically what to do. You are helping people, you are teaching people how to think for themselves about what they want to do, to make their own informed choices. So that can be through helping people build the skills or knowledge to make their own informed choices, hopefully to improve the environment. But the focus is on giving people the tools and the skills and the abilities to make their own choices about the environment. So your solution, your environmental education component must also be community centered. So we want to see that it is meeting a community need, that you have identified a need in the community, and that your solution is really well adapted to your specific target community and to that need that you have identified. It must also be collaborative and inclusive. So we were just talking about collaboration as teams, but we also love to hear about any partnerships that you have, any other groups or communities that you are collaborating with to make your solution, or that you would collaborate with to make your solution a success, and that it is also inclusive. So you are thinking really intentionally about any groups that might that maybe your approach might exclude, even if it's unintentional. So you really want to think about how you are being inclusive of all the different groups within your community, and you're not unintentionally excluding anyone. And we have more information about that in the handbook. And the last sub criteria is that it's focused on action. So environmental education and raising awareness is important. Building skills and knowledge are important. What's even more important is that it leads to an action. So we want to see that your environmental education component really encourages and empowers people to take action with the skills and the knowledge that you've helped them gain. So that is the EE component criteria, this is our biggest criteria. So I really encourage you to refer back to our handbook where we detail all of these further, and we give you a couple other resources, including our community engagement guidelines and a little bit more information about what is EE as you're thinking through this component, because this is a really important part of this challenge. And so a little bit deeper into EE, as you're thinking into environmental education, if I say EE, that refers to environmental education. We think about environmental education in terms of these 5 components. And so these are all, we can think of these 5 things as our objectives with environmental education. So these are the 5 things that generally we are hoping to change or influence through environmental education. So that is awareness, so that people are aware and that they have a sensitivity about their environment and about the issues related to their natural and their built environments. That they have the knowledge, so that that's a little bit deeper understanding about their environment and its issues. That they have the attitudes, so values, attitudes, motivations, all to improve or protect their environment. They have the specific skills or tools that they need in order to take action to help the environment. And also that they have the opportunities to actually participate in all different levels of their community, of society, to help the environment. So please keep these 5 things in mind and think about how your component, how your environmental education approach is affecting one or more of these 5 elements. Okay, so the next 3 criteria we're going to go through a little bit faster. The EE one is a little bit more in depth. The second selection criteria is that your solution is informed. So that means we want to see that in coming up with your solution, that you have considered the really complex and interconnected social, environmental, cultural, economic, all these different aspects, all these different dynamics of climate change and marine litter issues, because we recognize that these are very complex issues, and we want to see that you have taken the time to read up on these issues and that you are really aware of these really complex dynamics. And so in the application, we do have a question where we ask you to share about your relevant research or other evidence that you have found to back up or to support the solution that you propose. So to basically show how you know that your solution will likely be successful in addressing one of these issues. And it does not need to necessarily be research from journal articles. We recognize that those are not accessible to everyone. Some of them are pretty expensive. So you can use even news articles or other sources of information. In the handbook, we have included a resource to help you determine how, oh my gosh, what's the word? Oh, Madeline, Melissa, what's the word? To help you kind of assess whether your source of information is a good one or not a reliable one. We will find the word. I'm totally blanking on it, but it is in this section of the handbook. The next criteria is that it must be innovative. So we wanted to make sure that we had a definition of what we thought is innovative, what innovation is. And so it could be a brand new idea, but it could be an existing approach that you are applying in a new context. So it does not have to be brand new, but it has to be being applied in a new context, or it has to be maybe a better version of something that already exists. And finally, it has to be feasible. Oops, I did not copy that text over properly. But we want to see that you have the relevant experiences, the relevant partnerships, the relevant tools that you need in order to actually implement your project. This is a really important part. We want to make sure that we want you to be thinking big, and we want you to be thinking innovative, but we also want you to be proposing solutions that are feasible. So we do have a question that asks you to explain why you think your solution is feasible. Okay, so with that, I'm going to, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Denise, and then we will take any other questions related to the criteria, I think, at the end of the session, if that sounds good.
Great.
All right, Denise, over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Nina. Good morning and good evening, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this exciting opportunity. I'm so pleased to be here. This section is about how to make a great video pitch that's going to accompany your written application. And as these questions are coming in, I see the video, asking about the video component, and you may be wondering, why are we asking for a video? Well, your application, your written application, will tell us about your innovation solution, but the video will show us. It's an amazing opportunity to include visuals and graphics and really kind of put your idea in a visual format, and an amazing way to show yourself on camera, because we love to see your enthusiasm and your passion for your innovation solution. So that's why we are working on the video as part of this application process. And I want to emphasize that you don't need to be a professional camera person, and this is not about your English ability. This is really about communicating your passion and your idea through video, so we can see your vision and get behind you in this amazing solution that you're putting forward. So let's get started on some of these tips. You may have seen the top 10 video pitch tips that were included in the application handbook, but if not, I'm going to put them into the chat now. So these are top 10 tips that have links and suggestions of different places to go for footage and photos and whatnot, which I'll cover in a couple moments. But I just want to make sure everybody had that direct link. It's a good place to go back and reference as you're building this video pitch. And again, that is in the applicant handbook if you need to reference it once again. But in this webinar, we're going to go a little bit deeper into a couple different components that were mentioned in the top 10 tips. We're going to talk about briefly how to build a story into your video pitch, showing versus telling, which I've just mentioned, putting yourself on camera, and then be creative. We want you to really think out of the box. So I've got some fun examples to show you about how to do that. So Nina, if you could advance to the next slide. We are going to talk a little bit about narrative arc. So when you all go to the movies or watch movies, we're not going to the movies, I guess, anymore. When you're watching movies at home or reading a book, good storytelling usually follows a dramatic narrative arc. At the beginning of the tale, they're setting the stage, who's involved, who are the characters, where is the story happening. That's usually the beginning of a great story. But then in the middle of the story, in this middle of this narrative arc, there starts to be complications. There's challenges for the main character. And then at the end of the tale, usually there's a resolution to those challenges that these characters have overcome. And this is the traditional storytelling arc of all time. And you can actually use this arc within your video pitch. And as we're watching some examples in the next couple slides, think about how the applicant has woven those storytelling elements into the pitch, setting the stage, talking about the challenges, and then your innovation solution really is your resolution. So I just wanted to emphasize that having those points in your video is a great way, excuse me, of kind of telling the tale of your innovation solution. So that's narrative arc, how to build a story. So now if we advance to the next slide, we can talk about this aspect of showing versus telling. So I mentioned that your application is the written component of your innovation solution, but we really want to see how this solution could be put into play. So I'm going to talk about a couple different ways of doing that. The first one is build a prototype. You could do that with everyday objects that you might have in your house, or maybe create a model, like a 3D model or a 2D model with your computer. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of videos now that will actually have prototypes that people built into their solution. So let's take a look at this first video that has a prototype mentioned in it. And you might want to turn up the volume a little bit. Some of these videos might be a little on the low side volume-wise.
People aren't recycling responsibly. This is due to people thinking recycling is not convenient. 25% of people, according to the Huffington Post, say they don't recycle because it is not accessible or convenient to where they live. 10% say they don't do it because it takes up too much time. This results in objects that could be recycled thrown away like normal trash. That trash will then end up in landfills. Trash in landfill sites generate harmful chemicals and greenhouse gases. Effects of these harmful chemicals and greenhouse gases could be habitat destruction and global recycling or throwing away. Effects of these harmful chemicals and greenhouse gases could be habitat destruction and global warming. Since the landfills are filling up fast, if this is not solved, we could have more huge landfills that create dangerous chemicals. To solve this, our team has created a solution to make recycling more accessible. We have designed a talking recycling/trash bin called Ari, that if you tell it what you are recycling or throwing away, it will either open the trash bin side or the recycling side. Our community partner, Kim Orr from the EcoCycle Schools Department, has given us important information to consider with Ari, like Ari being fixed so it doesn't get stolen, or Ari having a constant power supply, and we may need to look into a service plan. Ari can be used in businesses like restaurants or hotels, in communities, and even households. It is also easy to use for children and adults alike. It can also make recycling faster. Recycling won't take up too much time because you are telling Ari what you are recycling without having to research what can and cannot be recycled. Ari can reduce recycling irresponsibly by being easily available to people.
Yeah, so what did everybody think? Any thoughts you want to put in the chat? Did you guys, was the prototype very clear? I think it was interesting to see that. The question is, just wanted to ask. Yes, yeah. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. So this is another solution as you're building your video. This particular example has a lot of animation and a lot of still photography. So we're going to take a look at this example, and then I'm going to give you a couple links to different websites that have free resources for great photos, video, animation. But this also has a prototype. It's interesting that both of these videos are both recycling solutions, but they have both a different approach to how they present their videos. So that's another way to look at this, is how different people with a similar innovation solution are approaching their video pitch. So let's take a look at this video.
Hello, I'm Shina from Grade 9 Legacy Bangor. The problem I'm solving today is the toxic waste that are being mixed up. The wet waste, the metal waste, all come together, and these bins don't really help. My solution consists of two parts. It helps people without any food and utensils, and workers who work in the midst of so much mixed up waste. for the bonus of the COVID-19 non-contact for people who can't reach and old and disabled. Introducing the scrub. To separate cautiously, rectify unanimously, and bionic. My ideation process consisted of Jamboard, which has a does, thinks, wants, and feels section. People do a lot of unintentional things. So much food, so much plastic is going away without even being recycled. And people think that they're doing enough to recycle, but actually there's a lot more left. And people want to give and want to have a clean environment. They also feel pity and sometimes annoyed when their dustbins are overwhelmed and dirty. The scrub trash cans come along with a weight that measures the amount of metal and makes analytics, which can help make laws, rules, and bionically less toxify the world into a happy place. The analytics can help identify locations on Google Maps for the dustbins and clean up the environment by recycling all the metal into utensils. Here's a prototype. That's a metal waste, and the metal sensor detects it. No contact necessary. And now the moisture sensor. We have a wet waste, and it automatically sensed it. We don't have to touch the lid. No contact. As the person waits for the trash to be picked up, the sanitary worker will be called and notified to come and pick up the trash. Meanwhile, there'll be facts about what can be done with the thrown away recycled trash. For example, there can be made 400 spoons and knives and cutlery. It is very cost effective. All that's required is an Arduino board and some sensors, and the metal can is made out of the recycled trash. And I hope the scrub will change the world to a better place.
So there you go. That's another way of approaching it. She used primarily animation and still photography. So at this point, I want to pop in to the chat some resources. These are all in the top 10 tips that the link that I put. But for photos, I would recommend unsplash.com. They are beautiful photos, all royalty free and cost free. For video, pexels.com, animationmovely.com, and map graphics, I don't even know how to pronounce that, vectizy.com. But these are all great resources for you to tap into. And as this one applicant did, you can also use screen grabs from Jamboards. She has a Jamboard in there that she did a screen grab, or PowerPoint screen grabs. So really there's a lot of options out there that you can use, and just feel free to pull from different resources. The only thing I would recommend is just make sure that they're royalty free, meaning they don't have copyright. And all the different websites that I put forward are all royalty free. So that's something you can easily get some nice material from these different websites. So, and the last example I'm going to show you, or this third example, is an opportunity to see how somebody used their smartphone. So the example is really more about how to be on camera, but I also want to have you look at this next video with the idea that you can use your smartphone to shoot a lot of content too. So it can be, smartphones are amazing these days. They shoot fantastic footage. And as you can see from this first still here, it's very creative. The applicant has taken the video and gotten it very close to his subject matter. So there's lots of different ways you can use your smartphone to capture the content, but also put yourself on camera. And that's the main example here that I want to impart to you, is that putting yourself on camera is an amazing opportunity to show your passion for your project. I would encourage you to look directly into camera. You'll see this in the example that we're about to show. It gives a nice connection to your audience, would be the people that are looking at your grant application. You can use your hands like I'm using right now to show your enthusiasm, but I encourage you to do it. It's not always the most comfortable thing to do, to put yourself on camera, but I think it really sets you apart and puts a face to the name of your application. So let's take a look at this example and you'll see what I mean.
My name is Jim Bentley. I'm a National Geographic Explorer with a Planetary Stewards Grant. My name is Jim Bentley. I'm a National Geographic Explorer with a Planetary Stewards Grant. I've been working with 5th grade students in Elk Grove, California, mapping how plastic moves from suburb to sea. Off behind me, you've got 3 large storm sewer outlets that form the headwaters of the Franklin Creek in Oak Grove, California. What we're finding is that plastic and debris is flowing into storm sewer outlets, which flow into creeks like this that head about 90 miles to the south and west that feed into the San Francisco Bay. Our goal is to understand where plastic is in our community, to tell a story about it using GIS, and then to present solutions to our city elected leaders on what we can do as a community to reduce the amount of plastic entering creeks that flow to the Pacific Ocean.
So that's a great example of Jim showing himself on camera. He's not there the whole time, but he's there enough that you can, as I said, put a face to an application. And I think it's a great way for him to show his enthusiasm about his project. And I want to emphasize again what Melissa just put into the chat. You do not need to be a professional videographer to do this. The smartphone, just get it out there and shoot, take some shots, have fun with it. And really that's my next message in the next slide is really have fun, be creative, think out of the box, because that's what this whole challenge is about. It's about creative solutions, innovative solutions to this climate crisis we're in. And just let your mind go and do interesting things that come to you and put things together that maybe not are the most traditional, but with this, for example, this is a music video that some folks put together about a water shortage in California, and it actually won quite a lot of awards, but it's very different. It's very creative. So let's take a look at that and see.
We have come from the future to tell you it's in your hands. There are flying cars, hotels on Mars, and one thing we all understand. You must save your water, teach your sons and your daughters. There's never enough to waste. More frequent droughts will remove all your debt, so make haste. Affirmative.
So I thought I would end on that just because it's fun and absolutely different. But those are the top line tips. Really, I just want to emphasize again, you want to show versus tell. You want to put yourself on camera, talk about that kind of narrative arc, set the stage, what are the challenges and how you're going to address them. And then the last, be creative and have fun. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to show your innovation in conjunction with your application. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Denise. So some great tips. And I do just want to really emphasize, like Denise and Melissa has said, you do not need to be a professional videographer to put together a great video. Denise had some great tips about just using your phone. And I really encourage you to also use those free resources that Denise mentioned about with images and animations and more. And we will share that out as well with the recording of this so that you have that. And I believe that's it's in the tip list as well. So yeah, great. All right. So that was those were our tips for the video component. And we also wanted to give you some overall tips for the written components. As we said before, you do have to do both of them. And we hope that you put those together in a way where they complement each other. So the video is all about, as Denise said, showing your idea and showing about your passion and your vision with your idea. And in the written component, we just want a little bit more detail about your idea. So your video does not have to include all of the detail about your solution. You can save that for the written part. The video component should, as Denise was saying, it should show your story and think really carefully about what you want to include in your video. And And then the rest you can just include in much more detail in the written component. So our overall advice is first, be specific. Be as specific as you can within the word limit about the details of your project. In past competitions that we have done, a common piece of feedback that we received from our judges, from our reviewers, is that they just didn't have enough detail about the proposed idea or project. So really be very clear about what you plan to do with your solution, and be as specific as possible with any activities or approaches that you plan to take, because you want the judges to have a really, really clear idea of what your solution is. So be specific. And along those lines, use the word count as your guide. So we include a word limit in each of the questions, and we really encourage you to use as much of that word limit as you can. We are giving you that space to provide detail about your project, so we really encourage you to use it. Our third piece of advice is to really align your responses with the selection criteria. We tried in designing the application, we tried to make it align as much as possible with the selection criteria so that we are setting you up for success. So you really know exactly what we are looking for, what the judges will be looking for and scoring your applications for. So really look back to that handbook, listen back to this webinar, and check back in all of the criteria and make sure that you are addressing everything in the handbook in your answers. And overall, going along with what Denise was talking about, tell us your story. This challenge is about your solution that you propose. But we want to know this. We also want to know the story of your solution. So we want to know about, the future that you envision with your solution, how your solution will be helping us create a more sustainable future. So for example, if there's a story behind how or why you came up with the solution, I know that there is a word limit, but if you have space to work that in there, that's the kind of thing that the judges really, it gives just really important additional context for the judges, and it helps your solution stand out a little bit more when we see how your solution is really connected with the person who is proposing the solution. And this goes back to that community-centered criteria. Please do share if you have a story behind, the community need and how you identified that and how this solution addresses a community need. That can all be part of telling your story. And just overall, if you take this approach, it can help you stand out from other applicants. So I know this can be a hard tip to actually implement, but think about, the additional context behind your solution, any backstory, or just connecting it to your passion and how you came up with this solution. That do include it if you have the space to do so. And just a final reminder, the deadline is October 25th. It's 11:59 p.m. US Eastern time. So make sure that you convert that to whatever your time zone is. That is our firm deadline. So please do not wait until the last minute to start in Submittable. Please, if you have any issues with Submittable, just email us. But I highly recommend going in at least a few days before the deadline, just to make sure that if we need to resolve any technical issues. So that is everything that I had. We will open it up to questions. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. Thank you all for joining, and we'll take some, and Denise, any questions for Denise as well about the video component?
I did see one about recording on Zoom, themselves on Zoom, and I think that works great. Record yourself on Zoom and then you can intercut visuals of your project, but I think that's a great solution to answer that question.
And feel free to unmute if you'd rather ask your question
Mhm.
verbally rather than in the chat.
And I also mentioned in the chat, we did not have English captioning for this webinar, but in the recording, we will share the recording through YouTube. So you will have the ability to caption the recording when you watch it back.
Oh, this is a really good question that just came in. Will different ages be judged the same? A 16-year-old versus a 26-year-old?
That's a really, really good question.
Good question.
The quick answer is yes. Everyone will be judged the same. I think our judges it may consider, you know, if you are 16 years old, you may have just less experience than someone who is a little bit older. So our judges will keep that in mind for sure. But otherwise, everyone will be judged the same. The age is just, you know, this challenge is focused on giving young people the space to propose these great ideas and then hopefully implement them. But we will not be judging any differently depending on your age.
Denise, this is a question for you. Is it good to use music or tunes in the background of your voice for your video? What do you think?
That's a great question. I did cover that in the top 10 tips. I think music is fantastic. My only advice beyond be careful about what you pick, because music is very, very impactful. It could make something feel happy and light or very dark. So it will definitely influence your video. And that's a great thing, the power of the music. But also just make sure if you have music, it's low enough for anybody who's speaking for their voice to be heard, because we want to hear from the speaker if it's you or another person. And so you just want to make sure that the music does not compete with anybody speaking. But I absolutely recommend using music, and music also should be copyright free. And we could put some resources together for that as well if you're looking for copyright free music.
On that note too, I might also recommend find a friend or a family member or a colleague who could watch your video before you submit it. You might not notice, you know, if it's hard to hear your voice, but someone else might. So I definitely recommend, or even giving it to a few people to see how they perceive it.
Yeah. And I think if you had the choice between music or hearing somebody's voice, you should probably go with hearing the voice, because that's the most important, is to hear from the people in your video. But if you can do both, that's wonderful as well.
Any other questions?
Oh, we have a question about where we're posting the recording, and that will be on the website, right? Right where we have all the Youth Innovation Challenge info. Madeline, do you mind popping that website in the chat one more time?
Yeah, so we will link it there, and I will also email it to everyone who registered for the webinar. So if you are here, you will receive it. And do we have social networks? So the Jeep itself does not have any social media accounts, but our secretariat, the North American Association for Environmental Education, I think you can just look for NAAEE on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us there. Great question. How about participants connecting on WhatsApp? We are not doing anything to really connect participants. But that is a really great question. I might actually pitch our ePro group if that's
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah.
So we have NAA has an online hub for environmental education professionals. And we have a specific group for young professionals where young professionals can share resources with one another. I will find it and share it in the chat. It is free to create an account. I highly recommend all of you take a look. Let me share this in the chat. Yeah, no, it's a great suggestion. And this is just one of many ways that we already have that you can connect with folks in the field.
We might consider the global EE group as well.
Oh, yes.
Because so many of the folks here are from all around the world, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Another option. And there was a question about whether the voting would be on social media, and no, we're not doing any voting on social media. We have a selection committee internally that will be selecting. Great, welcome from Myanmar. That's great.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if we have no more questions, we will close this out. If you have any questions, Madeline, do you want to put our email in the chat? You can email us and we are happy to help. This could be any questions about the application, or if you're just not sure where to start, we're happy to help. Or if you have any technical issues with the application platform as well. And you will receive this recording by the end of today, US time. So it might be the morning, tomorrow morning, depending where you are joining us from. But thank you all so much for joining. This was just like a high level summary of important details. So again, go look at our handbook. You can watch this recording back. We really wanted to give you as many resources and tips and things to reference as we can, because we want all of you to submit excellent proposals. We want to set you up for success. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions. And we really look forward to receiving your proposals and watching your great video pitches as well. So thank you all for joining.
Bye, thank you.
Yes, SNK, I will put the frequently asked questions in the chat here. Thank you. All right, thank you all.